Good morning, boys and girls. Do you ever make lists? What do you use them for? I'm a list maker. I make lists all the time, and I use sticky notes for that purpose. I have sticky notes all over my office. Things I need to do, things I need to remember, things I need to buy. I make lists all the time for two reasons. Number one, because I can't remember if I don't make a list. And number two, I love the satisfaction of crossing something off the list if I've completed it. I do that with things I need to do. This one is a list that I had for a couple of weeks ago. Look how I crossed everything off when I got it finished. I was so excited. It makes me feel so good to have accomplished those tasks. Oh, here's a list that I make. This is my grocery list. I need to remember napkins, shampoos, snacks, fruit, cereal, and soup. By the way, this list will grow because my kids will get a hold of it and they'll start writing what they want down. Mostly probably ice cream, because that's what I find on the list a lot from them. I make lists of what I'm going to have for dinner each week so that when I go to the grocery store, I know what I need to buy. So here's the list of my meals for this week. My daughter makes lists. She's in high school, so she has a lot of stuff that she needs to do. This was last week's list. At the beginning of the week, we go down through all of her classes and figure out what each teacher wants her to do. And then we make a little list and we put a checkbox beside it so she gets to check it off when she's done. That makes her very happy too. We make lists for all types of reasons. That's something that you'll need to know how to do as you get older, I'm sure. Sometimes I'll just take my phone, and if I'm thinking of something, I'll get on the memo part of my phone. Like last summer, we were driving back from Kalahari, and we went past this drive-through, or I shouldn't say drive-through, drive-in, a movie place. And I said, oh my goodness, we need to do that this summer. And then my husband and I came up with about 5 other things we wanted to do last summer. So I just kept talking into my phone. Things to do this summer. And I just said, go to the drive-in movie, go to Cedar Point, go to an Indians game. We had a whole list of things that we wanted to do. Lists are very handy to help us get things accomplished, to help us remember things. And for today's story, to help us get through our day. I have one of my favorite friendships right here, Frog and Toad. And we're going to read about Frog and Toad and how Toad made a list of something. And we'll see what happens when Toad's list doesn't go quite as it's planned. This is from the book called Frog and Toad Together. And if you're familiar with the Frog and Toad series, you know there are quite a few books with Frog and Toad as the main characters. And this is by Arnold Lobel. Though each one of these is a story in itself. I wouldn't say I guess it's chapters, but each chapter doesn't really go together. They're all different stories. Okay, so you can kind of pick it up. You can pick whatever chapter you want to read and it doesn't affect the rest of the story. So this is called a list, and there's Toad sitting there in his bed. It said, one morning Toad sat in bed. I have many things to do, he said. I will write them all down on a list, just like we did, so that I can remember them. Toad wrote on a piece of paper a list of things to do today. And then he wrote, wake up. I have done that, said Toad, and he crossed it out. Wake up. He crossed that off. See that? Silly Toad. Then Toad wrote other things on the paper. A list of things to do today. Wake up. Already crossed off. See that? Eat breakfast. Get dressed. Go to Frog's house. Take a walk with Frog. Eat lunch. Take a nap. Play games with Frog. Eat supper and go to sleep. There, said Toad. Now my day is all written down. He got out of bed and had something to eat. Then he crossed out, eat breakfast. Toad took his clothes out of the closet and put them on. Then he crossed out, "Get dressed." Toad put the list in his pocket. He opened the door, and he walked out into the morning. Soon, Toad was at Frog's front door. He took the list from his pocket and crossed out, "Go to Frog's house." So he's doing a pretty good job with this list, isn't he? Toad knocked at the door. There he is, knocking at Frog's door. "Hello," said Frog. "Look at my list," said Toad. "Oh," said Frog, "that is very nice." Toad said, "My list tells me that we will go for a walk." "All right," said Frog, "I'm ready." I love Toad. Frog and Toad went on a walk. Then Toad took the list from his pocket again. He crossed out, "Take walk with Frog." Just then, there was a very strong wind. It blew the list out of Toad's hand. The list blew high up into the air. Uh-oh, there goes his list. "Help!" cried Toad. "My list is blowing away. What will I do without my list?" "Hurry," said Frog. "We will run and catch it." "No!" shouted Toad. "I cannot do that." "Why not?" asked Frog. "Because," wailed Toad, "running after my list isn't on my list. It's not one of the things I was supposed to do today." Oh, Frog ran after the list anyway. He ran over hills and swamps, but the list blew on, and at last Frog came back to Toad. "I'm sorry," gasped Frog, "but I could not catch your list." "Blah," said Toad. I love that he mentioned he wasn't allowed to chase the list because it wasn't on the list. Toad's so funny. "I cannot remember any of the things that were on my list of things to do, and I will just have to sit here and do nothing," said Toad. Toad sat and did nothing, and Frog decided to sit with him. After a long time, Frog said, "Toad, it's getting dark. We should be going to sleep now." "Oh, go to sleep," shouted Toad. "That was the last thing on my list." Toad wrote on the ground with a stick in the dirt, "Go to sleep." Then he crossed out, "Go to sleep." "There," said Toad. "Now my day is all crossed out." "I am glad," said Frog. Then Frog and Toad went right to sleep. What do you think about that story? I think it's kind of funny. Toad was so into lists, he couldn't even live without it. He didn't know what to do next. I don't think that's what our lists are like. I think we can change our plans if we feel like it, but I think that's a pretty funny story about Frog and Toad. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to make our own list. What kind of a list would you like to make? Might it be something that you want to do this summer? Could it be something you're going to do tomorrow? Maybe you can be like Toad and you can write what you're going to do tomorrow. Is it going to be something that you're going to make for dinner? Is it something that you want to do with your family? Think about a list that you want to create. And we'll be right back to create our list. Grab a piece of paper and a pencil, and I'll meet you right back here. So we're back to make our list. And the thing I like about lists is most of the time lists are made just for you. So you don't have to really have a set way of doing a list. There's no real right or wrong unless you're doing a list for some type of class or for somebody else. So depending upon what you're making a list for is the way that you're going to do it. You can use different formats. So one of the things that I did, remember when I made my list of items I need to get from the grocery store, I used bullet points, and that's one way you could make lists. And it's just a little dot right before your item. So here, if I was making a list of items I needed to get at the grocery store, I could just put bullets in front of it, which shows you that each item is something new after each bullet. So there's the list of things I might be getting at the grocery store. So bullets are a way that you could do that. That's one way to make a list. The other way to do the same thing, if you're making just a list of individual items, is by using like a dash, which you could do as well. You could put a dash and then you could write the same thing. That dash represents each item, so you don't get confused and so you don't get them mixed up. You can write it with a dash. So if you're just making single item lists, that's two ways that you could do it. Now, if you're trying to do something in order, you might want to use numbers. First, I'm going to, as Frog said, get up. Next, I'm going to get dressed. Next, I'm going to eat breakfast. The way that you might organize this list is by numbers, because that's the order that you're going to do it in. Excuse me. Okay, another thing that you can do is, like I said, when I was explaining to you about Avery's list, she did it by subject area. So she started with her subjects, and the way that her day went, that's how she made the list. When I did my dinners, I did it by days of the week. So that's another way that you can make a list. You can say Sunday, and then you can say Monday if you're going to make a list like that. So really, the way that you make a list is up to you. The other thing I like about lists is I don't have to write them in complete sentences. Whatever information is most important is what I'm going to write on my list. So I don't have to say, I will get up out of bed. I know getting up, I know what that means, so I just have to write get up. I don't need to say, I'm going to grab my clothes out of the closet, I'm going to put them on the bed, then I'm going to get dressed. I don't have to write a lot of detail because, like I said, most lists are for you, and they're just quick reminders of the most important things that you need to know. So those are different ways you can make lists. All right, so there's a ton of other ways you can do it. These are just some of the formats that you can use, but now it's your turn. What are you going to make a list of? One of the things that my kids like to make lists of, and you might too, never too early to think about your Christmas list. And you might be using bullet points or dashes for your Christmas list. Or maybe if you're making it in the order of importance, like number one, this is the most important thing I want. Like if you didn't buy me anything else, this is what I would want, might go at number one. So that's a list that you could make. So now you can take your paper and you can use bullet points, you can use dashes, you can use numbers, you can use days of the week, whatever you feel is the correct way to write your list, you can do that. All right, boys and girls, thanks for being with me today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.